Hey everybody, Astral Hex Encounter here. We're going to try to make our way through a little bit of the Omega War from Ares Magazine number 14, I think from 1983, possibly. Either way. Oh, it says right there, 1983. Hey, look at that, right on the camera. This is quite a game. It's me jumping headlong into full-on war game mode that I am not familiar with. It's very complex. I've been reading the rules and laid out the board. This is the second time I've laid it out and kind of started the game in the past 3 days. But I've been picking away at the rules off and on for about a week. Just kind of reading pages and letting things soak in, and then reading a page and then reading the whole rules and reading all the rules again. And I was saying to my wife that it's really like learning another language. Just a lot of the terminology is a bit alien to me. The ideas behind it and the way they're trying to describe movement, for example, it's difficult for me to understand. But I think I'm starting to get a hold of it. I set it up the other night, maybe 2 nights ago, read through the rules, sorted all the chits out, and figured out what everything was, and then set it up, and then made it halfway through kind of a phase, and that took me a good 2 hours just to do that. It's difficult. Here's the sequence of play up here. So within a phase, sorry about that glare there, that light, within a phase, everything that's listed in there is what you're doing during that phase, and then the player turns over and the month moves ahead and you continue on with the game. There is a shorter game that you can play where you start in, what was it December 24/20? I can't remember. But I've decided just to dive right in. Even if I did play the short game, I highly doubt I would make it all the way to the end. I have a feeling this is going to be the kind of game where I'm going to get to a certain point, because I can't have a map set up on the kitchen table and the dining room table for a week. It's just not practical in our house. I'm setting it up now and filming this because tomorrow I'm going to have some time in the afternoon, so I'm thinking tonight when I pack it in, so to speak, and go to bed, I can leave it set up and still be able to play a bit tomorrow afternoon. So what's the premise? It is the year, we start off in July 2419. There's the Union players and the Revolutionary players, I guess. What do they call them? The Rebel players, rather. There's been war, there's been nuclear war. Pretty much the planet is destroyed. Everything is left in ruins. This is now, was it 100 years after or 200 years after? I think it was 200 years, 300 years. This symbol, the Omega symbol, was kind of used as kind of a graffiti to scrawl over Union proclamations. The winter of 2419, its meaning was clear. Omega, an ending to foreign exploitation, an ending to slavery in the Union mines, factories, and plantations, an ending to the phony trusteeship that kept America in thrall. Throughout the winter and spring, in the tents of the Dakotan nomads, staked on the high plains, deep within the bowels of the Clan Warrens, in the cratered mutant strongholds of Noisia, Inside the slave pens of New Denver, Omega was debated. The first slave revolt broke out on July 4th. The first Klan rising took place a week later. The Omega War had begun. So everybody is rising up against the Union. The beginning, from what I've read from people, the initial layout of the game is very rebel biased, but we'll see. One of the kind of war reports, I guess, that I read, even though it was heavily stacked on the rebel side, by the time he got into the meat of the game, the Union was kind of crushing the rebels anyway. So we'll see how it works out with somebody who's very inexperienced. There's a few things. There's a political track here. This marker has made it to 30 on the political track, and it moves back and forth, up and down, based on clan holds and metros and domes that have been taken over. You can see there's a chit right there. It says in revolt. I'll walk you through the setup as we go, but the game starts out with 2 of the metros or domes in revolt, which means that those are now taken over by the rebels. The Union, the only thing you can do from this point on is the Union can destroy them, and then it'll just flip over to a ruined marker, which means that then nobody controls it. It's one thing I'll have to read up on. I don't know how the political track moves up again. I'll read about that when we get to that point. So this tracks certain things. There's different stages, political index stages, how many new steps you're going to get, how many mutants come onto the board, nomads, how many risings, how many revolts, are nomads, defection, that sort of thing. And each one has 2 different numbers on it. And that's basically how you get new steps, new military units, all sorts of things throughout the game. You're following that track and following those numbers there to kind of move the game and change the game throughout the play. Here we have a combat results table with all the different terrains. Whatever terrain you're attacking, regardless of what terrain you're actually on, that's the terrain that you're looking for across the board there. Speaking of terrain, over here is the terrain key. And as I said there, the turn record track, you just mark it once the phases of the turn are done. The month moves ahead. The beigey ones there are for clear weather, and the white ones are for crummy weather, basically, unfavorable weather, which changes the terrain costs if you're in clear or nasty weather. Some of them anyway, not all of them. For example, the clear terrains cost 2 in the winter months, 1 in the summer months. Forest terrains cost 2 in the summer, 3 in the winter, that sort of thing. And that's how many movement points you're going to expend to go from hex to hex. There's some hexes like these ones here that are impassable. Basically, I mean, they cost you 6 just to cross the barrier. So it really puts a damper on your movement points. Now, I'm looking on the terrain and it says the waste terrains cost you 2. I thought these ones were livable only by mutants, these ones with the blotches on them, but I guess not. They cost you 2 in the summer and 3 in the winter. So let's take you through some of the chits here. Just give me a moment. We'll look at the chits here, the tokens. These are the Union Air Force air units, is that correct? Yes, the air units. There's the BF, which is Battle Fleet. There's the PF, which is the patrol fleet, and then there's the AF, which is the assault fleet. They have different numbers attached to them. You can see, maybe you can see. No, it doesn't. Unfortunately, this camera does not autofocus. Anyway, there's a few numbers on them. This one has a 6, an 8, and then a smaller 8. The first number is the attack rating. The second number is the defense rating. The third number is the movement rating. And then that number on top is the range. So how many hexes away you can be. Air units are special because they can come in and help other units. For example, if this Union hex was being attacked, these air units there could basically fly in and help to some degree in the battle. We'll get more into that as we get to that point. These are the mobile units. There's Union Light Division, there's Union Heavy Division, and Union Strike Division. They range from their biggest, well, they have a few differences, but one of their big differences is movement. For example, these ones can move up to 12 hexes. These ones can only move 8. Sorry for the focus there in that light. And then their attack and defense is a bit different, and their range varies, but the movement is the big thing. That's the biggest divide. Then there's rebel brigades, and they're basically these different colored chits. One of the little bit of design flaws in this, it's a good thing there's a legend at the back for what the tokens looked like on their sprues, I think they're called, because each of these colors refers to a different clan hold or reserve, and the reserve or the clan hold names, let's use this as an example. For that one, for example, is TIEU, TIEU. In that clan hold, none of the chits are labeled. Those are called warrens, by the way, with a little square on them. They're warrens. None of the warrens in the clan hold, none of those names match the chits. So it makes it really difficult to see which one goes where. So you have to refer to the legend, find the couple of names that you can read, and then throw those colors in that particular clan hold. It's a bit of a pain in the ass, to be honest. I really wish they would have done something different, even if they wanted to have a sub name, have the clan hold name and then a sub name underneath if you really wanted to do that. But there you go, that's the way that it is. So that kind of threw me for a loop the first time I was setting up. So when those ones are on the board, those are units that the rebel forces can control and move around the board. Okay, so the other ones are these ones right there, right down here. These are the mutant hordes, basically, or the mutant legion. Looking for a name here. Give me one sec. Yes, that's correct. That's correct. They're the Mutant Legion. Only the Union player has light, heavy, and strike divisions. Only the Rebel player has gangs and HW brigades. Mutant legions may only be recruited by the Union player, but the Rebel player may gain control of the Union player's mutant legions during the play. The front of each mutant legion piece is flipped up when the unit is controlled by the Union player. The back of each mutant legion piece is flipped up when the piece is controlled by the Rebel player. So if we take control, it flips over. And again, Yeah, I mean, it's just that all you're looking at is colors, so there's nothing really, you really have to remember where your pieces are on the board to some degree, especially when we get into things like that. I mean, it is a drastically different color, but you really have to remember that you're looking for those pieces when they're flipped over if you're the rebel player, and they're gray if they're the Union player. Flipping them over also brings them down a step, or does it? 4-2, 14, 6-2, 14. Yeah, it does. It brings them down a step. So in this case, it lowers their attack by 2. Their defense stays the same, their movement stays the same, and their range stays the same, which is odd. I would have thought that all that would have changed, but such is that. Let's get into the setup. Let's try that out here. I'll walk you through what I did. So, how to start. One player puts the game turn marker on the board, which we have done already up there. The other player puts the PI index. It starts down here at the 50 and moves throughout the setup. The rebel player places 18 revolt markers in an opaque container, which is one of those cups up there, from which they are drawn during play. The Union player randomly draws a revolt marker, looks at it, and places it on any Union dome of his choice that is inside a clan hold, not reserve. That dome is in revolt, and its PR is immediately subtracted from the PI level. The next step is step 6, and the rebel player does the exact same thing, except that he can place the revolt chit on a clan hold or a reserve. So that's what we did. The Union player placed their revolt marker on this Yorkan clan hold. The numbers here, this bottom number, the number 2, is the political index number, so that gets the PI level moved down 2 points. The rest is the same as everything else. First one is attack, second is defense, third is range, because you can attack the space and destroy the space too, which comes in handy later on when you're dealing with supply lines and things like that. The rebel player decided to throw one into a reserve, Braska. So the same thing, what happened on this one? 1 went off the political index, so that moves us down 1, 2, 3 total, all the way to there. So we took care of that. The rebel player places 1 partisan column on each of the 2 domes chosen in step 5 and 6. Partisan columns are these ones here. Other than the name, they're all identical. I haven't read, I can't remember what it said about the partisan columns right now. I think they can be controlled by either side, and they all have the same abilities: 4 attack, 2 defense, 8 movement, and a range of 1. And we'll see what happens with those throughout the game. So we placed 1 under each of the in revolt spaces there. The Union player picks 32 Union units of his choice, other than mutant legions, and places 2 units full strength side up in each Union settlement without a revolt marker. He then places 1 mutant legion in each metro and 1 mutant legion in the Union bubble. Air units may not be placed in the bubble to start. So this is the space that's called the Union bubble. It's in the water there, and it's the only one on the board, so that got a mutant legion. These yellow ones are the metro, so 1, 2, and 3 up there, so that's where the mutant legions went to. Gray side up because the Union player picked them, and then he just dispersed. Again, my strategy was nothing other than trying to utilize my air forces sort of in the middle-ish of the board. You can see there, right there, right there, there, just to kind of spread them around here so they can fly either direction and help out when they can, especially to get to the middle of the board if any action happens in there. I tried to put units with greater movement values further away from the middle of the board, closer to the edge. For example, this one here is 8 movement, this one here is 12, that one there is 14. Oh, sorry, that's a rebel player. That one up there is 12 as well, and that one up there is 8, just past it. So that was my only thinking and my only strategy for that side of it. The Union player picks any one of the 9 clan holds. That clan hold has risen, which means it's under the rebel player's control. At the start of the game, its PR is immediately subtracted from the PI level. So again, the thoughts in this was that I would pick clan holds that the Union player wasn't in, which turned out to be this one over here, that one up in the corner there, and then this one down here. Now, this was me coming up with it, since every space has a... When there's 2 numbers on a warren, the second number is the political value. So, because it says the clan hold has risen, I took the political value of each of the hexes that has political values and added them all together to subtract from the main PI level. I'm not sure if that's correct, but that's what I did. Then, like I said, discovered which chits belong there and then stacked them in the warrens as it said. There's no limit to the stacking amounts. So for example, this one I put 4. They each have a movement of 14. This one I put 2. One has a movement of 10, one has a movement of 14. No real rhyme or reason, it's just what I did. So that's that. So the Union player picks 1 and the Rebel player picks 2 clan holds. So that's why there's 3 on the board that are now under the Rebel forces control. Then the Rebel player places all nomad hordes in their own opaque container, from which they are randomly drawn during play. So, and that's what I did there. And it's just more units. They're just a solid color is the only difference really, visually. That's about it. That's pretty much how it starts out. So the play now begins with July 24-19 game turn and follows the sequence of play in part 4 until one side wins as described in part 5. So let's take a break here for a moment and I'll read up a bit and talk to you maybe about how the game ends, and we'll just kind of quickly go through the phases and give a very brief overview possibly. Pretty much 3 main ways that the game can be won. If the political index is over 45, is greater than 45 at the start of a game turn record phase, the revolution collapses and the Union player wins a decisive victory. If the political index level was less than 5 at the start of the game turn record phase, the Grand Assembly of the World Union votes to withdraw from North America and the rebel player wins a decisive victory. And then the third one is if the game ends because it is the end of November 24-21, which is the last month on our turn record track. So if you make it all the way to the end and the PI level is neither of the previous 2, then the PI level determines the winner as described below. So depending what column you're in, A, B, C, D, or E, there's different victories that are outlined there. Decisive victories for the rebels, all the way to decisive victories for the Union player. That's the basics of how it ends. Like I said, I doubt I'll be able to make it to the end just with time, but we're going to give it a shot to get as far as we can. The start of the game, maybe maybe what we'll do, instead of going through all the sequence of plays, maybe we will just kind of dive right into the game, and we'll go one at a time, and I'll move and tell you my movements, and we'll go from there. Let's do it that way instead. So the very first thing that we do is the Union recruitment phase. The Union player finds out how many new steps worth of units he gets this turn by reading across the new steps row of the political index. So here's where we get to refer to our handy dandy chart. So right now we're in column C. Up here, the very first one is new steps. We go along the new steps and it says 4/6. The number before the slash is the number of air unit new steps he gets. The number after the slash is the number of mobile unit new steps he gets. You can use the steps to flip over reduced strength units or to add new units to his forces as described in steps 2 and 3 below. However, mobile unit new steps may only be used to bring up to full strength or add to the game Union mobile units, and air unit new steps may only be used to bring up to full strength or add to the game Union air units, which makes perfect sense. Now, I don't have any mobile units left off the board. I've only got air units, so that's all I'm going to be adding this time. Because I think it is what it says. Let me just have a quick, because I have had no combat yet. Obviously it's the beginning of the turn, so there's no units to turn over. If some were flipped down a step, I could use it to bring them back to full strength, but that is not the case, so I can't even do that. There's a special option. Twice per game, the Union player may choose to skip steps 1, 2, and 3 of this phase and rebuild one destroyed Union dome instead. Only domes that contain a Union strike division and which do not have any rebel units next to them may be rebuilt. Whenever this option is used, the ruin marker is immediately removed from the dome and put back in its container. The dome's PR is added to the PI level. The dome immediately begins functioning in all ways as a normal Union dome. It can be put in revolt by the rebel player and can be destroyed in combat. So basically you can rebuild a dome twice per game, which will change the political rating, but it just means that you can't bring any new steps in, which is an interesting little rule. So there we have that. So we'll start with that. So I only have 4. Okay, I'll pause you and we'll be right back. The other thing to note is, in order to put a unit onto the map full strength side, it costs you 2 steps. If you want to put it on its half strength, it just costs you 1 step. I don't see the point at this stage to do anything half-assed, so I just added 2, one up here and one down there at full strength. So adding 2 air units used my 4 new steps. And again, no real rhyme or reason. They can only go on friendly settlements. If there's no settlements that you have at the start of the turn, then there's nowhere that you can put any new units. But I imagine if that's the case, your game is probably over if you have no friendly settlements to add to. I guess it could also be that you're on just a regular hex. You don't have anybody on a settlement. I don't know. Anyway, that's what happened. Now, we read across the mutants row of the political index. and we see what we come up with here. So the mutants row gives us a 3/4. The number before the slash is the number of times he must immediately roll 1 die. For each die roll that is less than or equal to the number after the slash, the Union player places a mutant legion in any unoccupied waste hex anywhere on the map. Rolls greater than this number are ignored. Mutant legions are always placed on the map during this step, 1 per hex with their Union side up. The Union player may, at any time, refuse to roll for mutant recruitment during this step. However, once he does so, he may never again recruit mutant legions, and this step is skipped for the rest of the game. So 3/4. So 3 times we roll 1 dice, and we'll see if we get under a 4 or less. Yeah, less 2 or equal. So 5, so nothing there. 1, there's 1 of them, and a 2, so we get to add 2 mutant hordes to any of the waste hexes, and again, the waste hexes are the red ones. So let's find where the Union has people. Union has some people here, so let's throw 1 there, and what the heck, let's throw another one up here. Again, no real rhyme or reason. This one's nicely nestled in to lend a hand in any battles that are happening there. So there's those ones added. Okay, if the PI stage is A, B, or C, or if it is foul weather turn, skip this step. We are in C, so we skip this next step. And that brings us to the end of the Union recruitment phase. The next phase is the rebel political phase. I'll just take a moment to refresh my memory on this, and we'll come back and see what happens. Alright, so the rebel political phase, step 1. What we're looking to do is turn a clan hold to the rebel player's favor. Our choices are very limited, and it's mostly due to the modifiers for the dice roll. So we go to the rising, and it's 1/5 for our C column. The number 1 is how many times you'll roll a dice. The 5 is the number you're looking to get. You're looking to get 5 or less to be able to turn the clan hold. Now there's various modifiers. One of the modifiers being if there is a revolt marker on one of the settlement spaces, you subtract 1 from the die roll. If there are any settlement spaces without revolt or ruin markers, you add 1 for each settlement. So in this case, we rolled a 2, and I was going for this Yorkan clan hold. 2, we minus 1 for that, brings us to a 1, but we add 1, 2, because Lex and Burke have nothing on them. So that still brings us to a 3, which is under our target number of 5, which means that now we've taken control of Yorkan, and we locate their chits and put them on the Warren hexes. As another example, if we decided to go for this one, for example, it would be a waste of a turn. This Mechlin doesn't have any revolt or ruin markers on it, and it does have some Union ground units on it. Mobile units, rather. So I think what had happened there was we'd have to add 5 to our die roll, which would, no matter what we rolled, would put us over the top. So a reason to try to turn some of the settlements, if you can turn them on the next game turn, you'll be able to take control slowly of section by section. So right now we will look at the Yorcan. I'll find the chits and put them on, and I'll read. I believe this affects our political index as well. By 2 plus 2 is 4, so I think it lowers it by 4. But I'll double check that, and I'll be back in a minute.